ahead and get started because it's just 7 o'clock now. Welcome, I'm so glad that you're all here. This is such a great turnout. I'm Maureen Amyot. I'm the library director here at the Westborough Public Library. And this is Mary Johnston, the chair of the library board of trustees. And we're gonna go through some little bit of library history, a little bit of backgrounds about our project, and kind of cover the timeline and answer any questions that you might have as well. So here we go.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and the opportunity to present some information to you about the library's proposed renovation and expansion. Before we get into project details, I wanted to give you a short history of the library building itself. The Westborough Public Library started as a cooperative library society founded by a group of residents in 1773. The members' dues were used to buy books that were stored in Breck Parkman's storefront on Main Street. The society evolved over the years into a few different organizations until the book collection was turned over to the town in 1857, and a board of trustees was elected. 10 years later, the town hall was remodeled and included space for the library. The use of the library grew along with the book collection, and by the early 1900s, the library had outgrown its space in the town hall. Land was purchased at the corner of Parkman and West Main Streets in 1906 for $5,000. Private donations of $44,860 paid for the cost of the building and equipping the new 10,000 square foot library. The population at the time was 5,400. The town meeting in 1977, recognizing the need for an expanded library facility, funded design and development plans for addition of the existing site. The 1978 town meeting voted $1,210,582 to build a two-story addition that would centralize library services to 2 floors accessible by ramp and elevator. The new library addition increased the building to 20,076 square feet and was dedicated in February 1981. You may be wondering, why now? Why are we proposing the renovation now? I would say it's overdue. Since 1980, Westborough's population has increased by 36%. Growth is currently still in a bubble, which will peak in somewhere in the 2020s and level off around 2035. Realizing the library needed to make some changes to meet the town's increasing population, library trustees hired a consult in 2020 to conduct a needs assessment to begin planning for the future. The study revealed that the current building could no longer effectively accommodate the services, wishes, and needs for the community, nor would it be able to do so in the future. It showed the library was undersized to serve the community as a thriving 21st century public library. It became clear that the library needed either expansion or a new facility to adequately serve the Westborough into the future. We applied for a grant for planning and design from our state agency, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, in 2014, and began work on a new plan. When the plan was completed, the MBLC announced a new round of construction grants. We were notified in July of 2017 that our application was successful, and we were placed at number 11 on a prioritized list for funding. We are now at number 1 on that list. When the MBLC announced grants awards in July 2020, we expect to be awarded our grant. At that point, we will have 6 months to gain local approval of the project. We expect that vote will take place at the October 2020 town meeting. The total project cost was estimated in 2016 to be approximately $24 million, with just over $9.4 million reimbursable under the grant. A new cost estimate is underway and should be completed by late summer of 2022. This slide shows the space deficiencies in the current building, with the existing areas in gray and the additional space needed in red. The point of this slide isn't to make you squint and read tiny words, but to show in a visual way about how much additional space is truly needed at the library. The biggest needs are the children's spaces, teen area, meeting spaces, local history, and staff support spaces. The proposed project calls for the demolition of the 1980 addition and a small portion of the rear of the 1908 building. A new 3-story addition would be added, starting 4 feet lower than the current addition, so that the floors in both buildings would match and updated mechanical systems could be installed. The historic character of the building will be preserved and woven into the addition, since the library is a significant building in the West Main Street Historic District.
Going through the process to determine the best location for the library building committee considered 7 different options. Base repair was the first one, which would just fix issues with the building that currently exist. The windows, for example, in the 1908 building are original to the building, and the exterior wood frames are disintegrating. We had a town meeting article a few years ago, you may remember, for window replacement, but when we heard there were construction grants on the horizon, we chose to return the funds to the town and wait for a renovation so the grant could help pay for that. Just fixing things like windows, upgrading the electrical systems, assessing and repairing or replacing the 116-year-old slate roof, and fixing some structural issues would trigger full compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and would require us to bring the building fully up to code. Repairs of this nature are not eligible for grant funding from the MBLC. Option number 2, an addition and renovation, would fix all the issues with the current building and add an additional floor in the back of the building. The current addition is unable to support a 3rd story, so an addition would have to be built over the existing structure. It would not add the additional square footage required in the building program, which is the document that describes the library building Westborough needs, and would not be likely to fit the aesthetics of the Main Street Historic District. For those reasons, it would not meet MBLC criteria and would be ineligible for grant funding. Option number 3 called for demolition of the 1980 addition and construction of a new 3- or 4-story addition. The 3-story option is the one that was ultimately chosen, which I'll explain in just a moment. We ruled out a 4-story addition, however, because it would overwhelm the beautiful 1908 building. It would be higher than the Forbes building, and it really wouldn't fit the character of the surrounding neighborhood. We also considered an option 4, which called for taking over part of Parkman Street and making it 1 lane heading out towards West Main, if you can picture that. Pushing our side lawn out into what is now the road and just making 1 lane, 1 way out. That option would have given us the additional square footage we needed, but would have had a major impact on the police department and the neighbors, and we felt that was not the best option. I think the police department agreed with that when they heard too. Lastly, we considered building a brand new library on an alternate site. We looked at all of the town-owned property in Westborough to see if there was a parcel that was large enough to accommodate a new building with parking. The state hospital property immediately came to mind. It's a beautiful spot with open spaces, views of the lake, but the location on the other side of Route 9 was problematic since a library on that site would not be walkable for many residents. The survey that we conducted during the planning and design process was loud and clear that residents wanted the library to remain downtown. The closest parcel we could find to downtown was a spot adjacent to the senior center parking lot on Rogers Road. We examined that spot, but determined there wasn't enough land for a building and the additional parking we would need. It would have also limited any future expansion of the senior center. It was located too far from the center of town and would not be walkable. Construction of a new building would have also left our beautiful 1908 building, a showpiece on West Main Street, vacant, and the town would have had to come up with other uses for it down the road. It's a special feature of our library that for 114 years, anytime a Westborough resident went to the library, they came here to 55 West Main Street. We have a long history in the current location, and we're committed to protecting that history while providing a library that the town needs and deserves. So I want to show you a few drawings of possible floor plans and to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. So this slide shows you an aerial view of the existing building. The dark dotted line that you see is our property line. The Congregational Church is above and the Forbes building is below.
Could you maybe step aside?
Yep, sorry. Sorry about that. This slide shows you our existing floor plans. And again, not to make you squint or read tiny words, I'll kind of walk you through it. So first, the orange space here is the children's room on the lower level. The light yellow next to it is the current meeting room. And that currently holds a maximum of 40 people under fire code. The rest of the area is restrooms, mechanical spaces. The Friends of the Library have a sorting area for their donated books. And this is our employee staff room and storage and elevator machine room. The main level is to the right. This purple area is where we are now in the adult section with computers, shelving, and the Westborough Center for History and Culture, our local history area. In the middle, in light yellow, is the checkout desk, the stairs that go down to Parkman Street, our teen area in green, and then the blue is the rest of the adult area, which is newspapers and magazines and new materials. And then the light yellow here is the front entrance. The upper level drawing is, this space is staff area at the top. My office is at the front, and our assistant director and cataloger have their space behind my office. This is currently a storage closet, and what's labeled here as a workroom will be converted into another meeting space when demand on our downstairs meeting space got to be too much. We freed up that space as a bookable meeting space. The rest of the space upstairs is attic storage and the flat roof that is right above us right now. This slide shows you an aerial view of the proposed addition. It would go a few feet closer to the property line in the back and on the Parkman Street side with a new side entrance and courtyard area along Parkman Street. So again, these are possible options. Probably when we're actually standing in it and it's finished, it probably won't look like this, but these are just to give us some ideas of what it could look like. So this is a possible option for the lower level in our 3-story plan. And as plans refine, some of the interior things will change. So this plan has a larger meeting room that could hold 64 people that would be dividable, 32 and 32. With storage for chairs and tables, which we don't currently have. The teen space would be located on this level, much larger than the current teen space we have now, and enclosed so that we can enclose some of the noise and fun of our teens. And then the rest of the space would be dedicated to shelving for the books for adults. There would be table seating, soft seating, and a checkout desk in this level. The rest of the space again is mechanical, server. There will be restrooms on every floor in the new building, something that the community has asked us for over a decade. I've been here almost 12 years, and every community survey we've done in 12 years has said, please add more bathrooms. So this will add restrooms on every floor. The Friends of the Library will still have their sorting area, and our boiler room and mechanical will remain where they are in that level. The main level, I'll let Mary.
This shows the main level, main floor. Yeah, right. Staff workspace will be located here in the space currently occupied by the circulation desk. Westborough Center for History and Culture, and part of the existing adult fiction section. Small 2 to 4 person study rooms are added here as well, along with space originally designated as a digital media lab. That will most likely become additional study rooms or a conference room based on feedback from our current recent community survey. The rest of the adult books and materials will be located here with soft seating and work tables. The 2 front rooms are designated as popular library and periodicals. Popular Library would feature new materials and high-demand items, and periodicals would be our newspapers and magazines. That area would have comfortable seating like it does now, only there would be a lot more. The upper level is where our newer, larger children room would be located. The area will feature a program space, office space for staff, and a workroom for tasks like cataloging. The shelves will be much lower than the current shelves so that our staff will have sight lines throughout the whole space. There will be soft seating, work tables, play tables, and spaces for parents to sit comfortably with their children to read together. And did I mention restrooms? We also envisioned some type of early literacy area that would feature manipulatives, toys, and other early literacy experiences for our youngest patrons. They say play is a child's work, and we want to give them an appropriate, well-stocked space to do their important work. Also on the top floor, we plan to feature the Westeros Center for History and Culture, the public space for people to come and research about our town's history. There will also be an archival storage space located behind the public area, which will allow us to preserve the treasures of our town for years to come. You know, we can't afford an archive like you'd see at the Library of Congress, for example, but a space that has consistent temperature and humidity year-round will ensure us our most precious documents will exist for the next generations to study. This is a very high-level idea of one of the possible designs for the exterior of the building. What we're showing here is a few things. First, there will be a 3-story addition in the back, and all the roof lines and floors will match. Second, there will be a lot of windows, especially on the Parkman side of the building, to bring in natural light. This has been a reoccurring request in our latest community survey. And lastly, there have been many, many requests for outdoor courtyard and outdoor usable space. That's what we're showing here. Several veterans have also requested that we add a flagpole, and that's present in the rendering as well. This slide shows the first concept of what a renovated children's room could look like. You see lower shelves, bright colors, fun furniture, and even shelves that are tunnels for kids to possibly go through. There is shelving that allows us to display books with covers facing out that are more easily browsable for children. There is a lot of natural light and energy.
So our original schedule for the project, if we had been approved for a grant in the first round back in July of 2017, would have had our project already completed. Since we were waitlisted, then hit with a pandemic, that has definitely changed. We moved up to number 1 on the waiting list in July of 2021, this past summer. We always joke that we're already number 1. But now we're really number 1. That was our theme all summer. The Library Building Committee reformed in early fall and began meeting in October. We selected a new Owner's Project Manager, or OPM, in January and are continuing with the original architect for the project. They are currently working with the Library Building Committee to update the 2016 cost estimate and do some minor refining of the design. We expect the cost estimate to come sometime around early July, which is the same time we're expecting the announcement of our grant. Once our state agency, again, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, announces the grant, we have 6 months to get local approval. That means we expect to be at the October town meeting asking for you to approve the project. Just like school projects, ours is a reimbursement grant over 5 years. So we're required to get approval from town meeting for the full amount of the project. And MBLC reimburses us our $9.5 million when we reach specific milestones during that project. So assuming that town meeting approves the project, we would begin searching for a temporary location while the designers are working on completing the designs. We will not be able to stay in this building because it will become a construction site. We would move into the temp site in the summer or fall of 2023, with construction beginning shortly thereafter. Construction will take about 2 years, so would be done around the end of calendar year 2025. Furniture would arrive, things would be set up, and the ribbon cutting, party, and celebrating would take place in the first quarter of 2026. And I know you want to know how much is this going to cost. So what I'm going to tell you, in 2016, our cost estimate just for the construction part of the project was $15.89 million. That figure came from our designer, Lamero Pagano Architects, and AMF, an independent cost estimator. When you add in the soft costs, like OPM fees, designer fees, contingencies, furniture, landscaping, and so on, the total project cost came out to just under $24 million. That figure also included 3 years of escalation as well to 2019 and was the basis for our construction grant application to the MBLC. The $9.4 million we're receiving is approximately 40% of the eligible costs of the project. Not all costs are eligible costs. And if you'd like more about info about what's eligible and what's not eligible, I can explain that separately. The important thing to note is that the amount is fixed and will not change even if the cost of the project increases. There are a few other potential considerations that we'll be keeping in mind. First is that the Mass Historical Commission may require an accessible ramp at our main entry. We're applying for a waiver as part of the project to make the Parkman Street entrance our main entrance. That side will be fully accessible. The Congregational Church next door has been a wonderful neighbor for years and years and allows library staff and patrons to use their parking lot when there are not events going on at the church. We know there are some drainage issues that could be worsened with our new addition, so we may need to address that issue to remain good neighbors. There's also been word that the state may be releasing changes to the energy code, and there are efforts to make Westborough more energy efficient through the Climate Action Plan and other green initiatives. We will take all of those factors into consideration when designing the building and all of its supporting systems. COVID has wreaked havoc on many, many things, as we know, and we don't yet know the effect on our project as it relates to the labor force, supply chain, or even vacant space that would be available for our temporary library. And lastly, some good news. The U.S. Treasury, if you haven't heard, is formulating a coronavirus capital projects fund at the federal level. This program would award funds to the states to invest in local capital projects. One of the allowed uses that we know of already is for library construction. Massachusetts has applied for funding, and we'll hear in the fall of this year how much is coming and what it will be used for.
To wrap things up, if we don't do this project now, it will most likely be the year 2029 before the MBLC offers another planning and design grant round, and 2030 to 31 for construction grants. If we wait and reapply at that time, there's no guarantee that we would be awarded a grant at all, or equally bad that we'd be waitlisted again. It could be the mid to late 2030s before it will be completed, and the building as it exists now will not make it to that point. There are major repairs that are needed that we as trustees have been postponing in anticipation of this grant. Some of those include replacement of the original single pane windows in the 1980 edition, the data and electrical infrastructure that are inadequate for future needs, and structural issues with chimneys and foundation. All of those will need to be addressed either piecemeal or as a whole, and they cannot wait. The slate roof of the 1908 building is now 114 years old and has a lifespan of 100 to 120 years. We've heard so far from almost 300 residents in our recent community survey. They want this renovation to happen. There are so many stories in the comments of how grateful they were for the library services during the COVID shutdown, during the times they needed information, or when resources helped them to find jobs or file paperwork for their benefits. We hear the stories all the time at the desk. People use the library as a way to stay connected with each other in many, many different ways. Our community deserves that kind of place, and now is the time to make that happen. Thank you for coming tonight to hear about the projects, and I'm be happy to take any questions.
Hi, I missed happening. No, no.
It's okay, it's
and my
recorded.
building addition's gonna get knocked down, but that's okay, because when I first came here, we had glass floors on the stacks, which I'm sure Bill Lane remembers, so you actually had to walk on thick glass to get into any of the shelving to pick a book. So things are improving all along. Hi, I'm Chris Allen. I would like to ask, because I may have missed it, what kind of meeting rooms you are going to have, and do you have, having visited Grafton recently, they have coffee rooms for friends of the library, or a place for people to have a cup of coffee, sit down and chat, talk about books or a book club, and I wondered what kind of meeting rooms and informal rooms do you have?
So in the current plan, there's a larger meeting space to hold, I think it was 64 people, that can be divided in half so that we could have 2 programs going on in that space at the same time, as well as on the main floor, this floor, several additional smaller meeting rooms for 2 to 4 people to use for whatever, to get together, to meet, to chat, as well as increasing the amount of like soft spaces that we already have in our library to encourage that community bonding. The library, as I've always seen it, is a hub of our community, and we want to foster that relationships among our community patrons, and we want to be able to provide more of those spaces, as those are, I would say, almost
Would
popular.
you have coffee available like they do in Grafton?
It's not drawn into our current plan, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be in the final plan.
Okay. And another question about sustainability. Do you have any place for green roofs like I've seen in other libraries, as well as what kinds of things you're doing that are sustainable and ecological and environmentally conscious?
So it's a fantastic question, and we thank you. What I can update you on currently is when we went through this process back in 2016 was the application, but the process leading up to that, Westborough as a community, as well as many other communities in the state, weren't at that green level yet. Even back then, we were talking about making this project as green as possible. Since we submitted the application, everything in town has moved in such a fantastic direction to being more energy aware and efficient and green. And so actually the library building committee met today with Pete Dunbeck from Sustainable Westborough to talk about that very thing. So there are certain things that nothing's already set in place, but the scope of the project is laid out within the grant. And so there's some things we are limited to in terms of what we can change at that point. But those features can all be discussed now, and that's what we were talking about today in this meeting. So that is all on the table, and we hope to make the best building for our town as possible.
Super.
With regard to the meeting rooms, I was with some folks today and they were saying, oh, please ask tonight, please can there be windows in the meeting room?
Yes.
Any chance of it?
Yes, capital YES. That's
Thank you
one of
very
the worst features about this building, and it's one that we hear about all the time is, and I saw it in one of the survey results this afternoon about the meeting room is like a dungeon. Because you go in there and you don't know if it's night or day outside. So yes, the meeting room will definitely have windows.
Thank you.
And if you haven't, Maureen mentioned the survey, and we're getting a lot of feedback from that. If you haven't had a chance to take that survey yet, please do, and please spread the word, because that really gives us the input of the town, what they want to see and what's important to them. Right now,
What's the life expectancy of the building?
in the new building.
We talked about the new fire stations building good for 50 years. What's this gonna be good for?
That's, our planning is on a 40 to 50 year planning horizon as well.
Will the footprint for this building increase and will it require any variances from the town?
So they are looking at a footprint for increased size in the back portion of the building, not in the historic one, and it would go through all sort of the proper channels for variances. I don't know the exact details of that.
No.
There is not a lot of room. We're very cognizant of that, and being good neighbors to our patrons behind us as well. So that is on the forefront of our conversation. But everything would run through the proper town channels for that.
I had 3 questions. One was about the meeting room, which was sort of addressed already. But were those small meeting rooms, will those be just like drop-in rooms or reservations like the room downstairs? Like if you're here and you meet a friend, can you just go jump in? Or reservations? That's the first question. The second
Probably, we haven't gotten to that point
Okay.
with the planning yet, but.
drop-in rooms would be great.
Yeah.
Throw that out there. And I noticed the children's room I know is moving to the top. I was wondering if the elevator will be bigger
Yes.
to assess strollers
Yes.
up there.
So if I can just pause on that for
Yeah.
a minute. The elevator needs to be fixed one way or another.
Correct.
That is one of our major things with the library is we keep holding on to that elevator. But yes, that would need to be addressed for sure.
Awesome. My third question is the room of things staying?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't see that on the floor plans because that did not exist
Okay.
in 2016. So we'll be, like I said, things will change on the interior and the way we allocate space will change. There's also some of the feedback that we got from MBLC when they gave us our position of 11 on the waiting list was that we really need to look at the amount of shelving because they felt we were very heavy on shelving and that we needed to repurpose some of that space for gathering points. And now that we've been through COVID, we know we need more space to have people gather, but that they can be spread out if if we ever have a situation like that again, where we need to make sure everyone is 6 feet apart. And we can do that by compacting our shelving a little bit more. Does that make sense?
So I'd like to say that our biggest conversation as a library building committee and board of trustees now is that this whole application and process and needs assessment was done in 2016. And as we know, the needs of our town have changed, and we want to be very cognizant of that as we're planning for the future of our new library. So a lot of these things, like the room of things, is a great example. It did not exist in 2016, but we want to plan for now and in the future. So also, just another plug, take the survey. If you have other ideas that you're like, I saw this in another library and it was really fantastic. This is an amazing time to put in that input.
If you need to find the survey, it is linked on the front page of our website, which is westboroughlibrary.org. And there are some postcards on the counter as you walk out if you want to grab one. And just zap the QR code on the postcard.
Also on our library website is all of the documents related to the construction project, all from the past to current, as well as all of our meeting minutes for both the trustees and the library building committee, so you can stay as up to date as possible. And all those meetings are open to the public, and we welcome you at any time.
Yeah, I would just say I'm a little bit disappointed that you're just going to have one large meeting space for, you know, community events or for, you know, people to come in and lecture or whatever. It's probably because of your footprint, you know, I'm sure that's why, but I mean, if you look at Shrewsbury's library, for example, they have some very impressive meeting space. It's almost like college lecture rooms or whatever, but, you know, I mean, maximizing community space would be great.
And so we actually have an answer for why it doesn't, in addition to, we are limited in our footprint here. And when we look at the needs of the town and being fiscally responsible with the money that we have for this project, we have a meeting space here, but we are also very aware that when the Forbes building was renovated, they put a big hall in over there, and it's open to the public as well. So that was an area for us to look at our needs assessment and say, that's a community building that already has a large community, public open space for people as well. So we didn't put it in our plan so that we can make more programming area in the building. It was one of those decisions of how best to use the footage, because there's only so much space in this downtown area that we cherish so much. So that is the reason why, and it is just, if you were not aware that space is open to the public, that you can reserve that.
Yeah, I mean, it's set up like a, you know, like as if a selectmen's group is going to meet there or something, you know, but it has this kind of a structure to it. It's not just an open space for, you know, but whatever.
But that is why we took that into consideration for here.
If the current library has space for a zillion books, how much space will the new library have for, you know, hardcover book, a zillion as well, or more or less?
The plan, as you saw on the screen, has it slightly less than what we have now. But as I mentioned, MBLC recommended that we downsize our print collection further. And so we'll be working with the architect to figure that out and see if we can make that work.
Part of that is also a reflection of the interlibrary loan system, that we have access to all other libraries' materials, so it allows all libraries to work collaboratively to not everyone hold every copy of a book, and we can share between libraries.
Okay, can I just, on that, you know, the area over here where the PCs are and stuff, will there be similar footprint available for the computers and stuff, or will that go and it will just be outlets to plug?
No, we'll still
PCs
have
into?
computers for the public because we know everybody doesn't have devices of their own. We will have far more outlets because if you look around,
In this library.
there's not one in the
many at all.
general area. There will be more outlets to plug into, and we will have better Wi-Fi than what we are currently able to offer because in 1980 we didn't have Wi-Fi, so we were planning for that, and you know, we do the best we can as technology changes, but all of that will be improved. But yes, there definitely still will be computers for the
Great.
public.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, if I may, just we know of at least 10 that are going before us, some of which may have been completed. What opportunity is being taken to reach out and try and gain lessons learned from those towns, and also both in design, planning and design, and then of course if the end user feedback is there, what are they telling us, or what will they tell us?
Absolutely. Maureen is in constant communication with other library directors and help us as a guide through our own project. We've already reached out to some of them and they've already helped us to get to this point already, to learn some lessons from them and see how their projects have been going. It was encouraging to hear that the projects that were underway during COVID have completed and relatively on budget and in that time frame. So that was a little bit of encouraging news because it's uncertain waters for us in terms of how that's going to come. And so, yeah, we definitely rely on Maureen's expertise and her communication with other library directors for stuff like that. Something else that the trustees have done was we reached out to the MBLC to see, now that it's been such a delay, that we've been on the wait list and COVID, what else can we do? How much wiggle room do we have in a fixed grant already, and see what parameters might be changed? And as trustees, we feel like it's our responsibility to be as fiscally responsible as possible. And if there's a way for us to lessen the burden on the town, we're going to do that. So that's why we opened that line of communication with the MBLC to find out what is it that we could possibly change back then, or what can we do going forward. And then we're using them. We have a representative from them? What is she classified? That is assigned to us to help guide us through this process for Westborough. So she's dedicated to us, and she's going to be a great resource to help us find out if there are things. There's only a certain percentage of things that you can change once your grant application is accepted, and you're already at that point. So some things we can do and some things we can't. So we'll see how that goes.
You mentioned the 50 years the building should last us. How are you going to incorporate the green aspect? I notice the town is going into the LEEDS program, and the state's talking about eliminating fossil fuels. How is that going to impact this project?
So that was the exact conversation we had with Pete Dumbeck today. And so that meeting minutes are recorded and will be on the Library Building Committee Google Drive that's on the library website. So the answer I have for that is I don't know at this time, but we opened up that conversation today because, as we discussed back in 2016, that wasn't on the table. It was kind of like the room of things that didn't exist back then. That does now, and we're very aware of that, and we need to discuss with our architect and our OPM and our construction manager how we can make this project more energy efficient and green community standards, weighing the cost aspect for where we are in a fixed grant. So that conversation is open, but I don't have answers to you of how it's going to change just yet. We actually talked today about the impact of fossil fuels, going electric, and all of the state mandates that may have been put in for 2050, and how we can get there and what's the right choice to make. Do you go on with our plan? Do we retrofit it later? Do we build to be able to connect later, or do we do it all now? Those are all possibilities. But I don't have that exact answer today, but it is in conversation.
So if the funding's approved in October and there's a need for the temporary site and it's going to be a 2-year time frame, is the plan to try to be able to continue to offer as much of the same services as we're getting now?
Yes. Yep, so we have not anticipated any cutback of services moving to a temporary location. Space might be smaller.
Yeah, the space
but all
will
of our
definitely be
services
smaller.
will be available, absolutely.
Yeah. We don't anticipate being able to afford a 20,000 square foot temporary library.
Yeah.
So some of our books and other materials will have to go into storage. We'll take the rest with us. We'll continue to purchase new materials during those 2 years. So you'll have all the new bestsellers and all the great Room of Things. And we'll still have all of our programming. We may take our events out if our space doesn't lend itself well to big programs. We'll take them out. We'll find space somewhere else. We'll partner with other organizations. We'll find ways to make it work. But yes, we'll still have all of our events and programs and things to bring everybody together.
Yep. As creative and flexible as our staff was during COVID, providing services and programming, we will continue that. It's our number one commitment to keep our services levels the same.
If indeed the opening hours remain the same, but the library is much larger, will you anticipate having more staff hours each week?
There is potential.
It's possible. We don't really know the answer to that yet. It's possible that down the road we might need to, but we really don't know that yet.
Okay. questions? We can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your evening to come here tonight and join us to talk about the library. It's our favorite thing to talk about. We'll be around if you have any questions. Maureen is always here. You can reach out to her. You can reach me through the library trustees email site. We're happy to come talk with any of you at any time. If you haven't taken the survey yet, please do so and join us at a meeting. We would love to have you.